What I think being human is about really beginning to connect to that inner intelligence intentionally, and then using AI as a tool, not as a replacement.
I'm your host, Shah Hurley. Each week, I invite a conscious leader in tech, sales, and beyond to share their inner journey, how they overcome obstacles, how they achieve success while staying true to themselves, and above all, what makes them human beings. I hope those authentic conversations serve as an inspiration for you as you continue your own inner journey of self-discovery, healing, and mastery. Hi, Nana. Welcome to the podcast show. I'm so excited for today's conversation. But before we dive right in, can we just maybe start with the intro and over to you?
Well, thank you, Shah. It's wonderful to be here with you and, greetings to your audience. And as I mentioned, I've admired your ethic, your discipline, but also the intelligence that you bring to this, rather than with the spiritual. It's very important to balance feminine and the masculine. Yeah. So, then on my journey, the summary, I suppose. So, I'm an immigrant. It's important to conflict that, because that's part of the conditioned experience, right? So I came with this notion of, I'm, like 50 cents and get rich or die trying. So I'm like, come on. I'm going for the American dream, my version of it. Came in, but I also knew earlier on that education, that was my thinking then. So there's sort of two versions of Nana, I suppose, we'll discuss. For the condition, Nana, condition. So like education is very key. And I also have this notion that no one was going to do anything for me. There was no one to turn to. So I had to discipline early on. And although I had so many internal challenges that I am aware of now, the ego and low self-esteem. But I started off in practical terms in banking. So, and I lived in the Washington, D.C. area where I went for, a regional bank, which now known as M&T Bank in the supervisor. And then moved on to another bank, which was Wachovia, now known as Volkswagen. And then I transitioned from that to management consulting, recruitment law with Booz Allen Hamilton. And that's really where my started to find my real professional charts, being there with some quality professionals, learning, observing. But in the meantime, in the evenings, going to school, grad school. From Booz Allen, I, senior consultant, I joined Deloitte Consulting as a manager. I did well then. And then from Deloitte Consulting, I went to World Bank Group as an HR officer. It was a real dream coming from so-called third world country, Ghana. So that was a big thing. World Bank. I was with the IFC, International Finance Corporation, the private sector. And then I was there a couple of years. And then the World Bank Group, I joined National Education Association, the nation's largest which inspired, in some ways, my PhD dissertation. And the thing made me more assume the internal structure of the union, thinking about efficiency from an HR perspective. Then from there, joined the Gates Foundation. That's what brought me to Seattle. And so Gates Foundation, and that was a very pivotal time that I needed a break from the East Coast. So my Washington, D.C. days, and re-break. So that's what brought me to the West Coast. So that from the Gates Foundation, I joined Python, most. But whilst there, you and I ran the same coaching program. And we can get into how that began and also the year-long coaching program, which is really me walking into my true mission. So from being an HR professional, I'm really focused on leadership development. I'm a real leadership development professional because I have a PhD in leadership from Walden as well. But going to IPEC was sort of a lifelong dream. When we can so I'm giving you sort of more of the practical side of what I'm sure we're going to talk about third for and so forth. So I finally have the courage during the pandemic to step into that. And we have the role training, ICF, international coaching regulations certified. So, you don't have to be certified. You don't have to be certified to be a life coach, but certainly, I think a lot of accountants and CPAs, but I was being the CPA is important. So being a part of ICF sort of distinguishes one a bit. So that's been a little bit. I think I rambled a little bit.
No, it's okay. I think you kind of explained your journey from banking to consulting to the so-called nonprofit organization, kind of serving the community in a third world country, sort of, and which I'm not surprised at all, given what I know about you. You're all about being at service and transitioning to being the corporate world, Microsoft, HR, and you got your PhD in leadership development, and now like stepping to your true mission. I'm so touched by all that you do, like the inner mileage and all that stuff. Curious, as you walk on this journey, like you kind of share this external world, right? Like to the outer world, you're transitioning from banking to this and to that, but like curious how your inner journey went in terms of like your definition of success and that time back then. And you touch a little bit on this conditioning, which I'm so familiar with as an Asian, women. All the conditioning, like if you can share maybe on the high level, your definition of success back then till maybe to a certain point, and you started to question yourself, hey, that's not what I wanted in life. And to now, like what's your definition of success right now?
Wow, that's a very astute question. Thank you. Like many people, I should speak from the first person, direct experience. That's the only truth. And I was externally driven. So I believe in the meritocracy. Being an immigrant, my conditioning was if I came and worked hard, improving myself, then there would be clear evidence that, hey, look, what you've done, so you merit. Well, where was I wrong? But anyway, I believed in that. So that led to a certain discipline. Where discipline comes from being a disciple. So that requires having certain daily rituals that over time lead to incremental and significant change in one's life. Right? The only way real change happens, and I'm a big fan of the work of James Clear's Atomic Habits in that regard. So I believe that if I work hard, then by Jove, I'm going to be a C-level. I've got the grades. I'm kidding. I'm a survivor. I believe in myself. Even though I had all the programming, there was a pureness in my self-belief that if I worked hard enough, then I would. But of course, I had my traumas, and we all bring our traumas to work. And I think in the world today, it's becoming evident that you're fragmented, that's a mental health issue. There's only one face. But anyway, in that pre-pandemic world, I just want to talk about the AC and recent world, the before Corona world and the after Corona world. So the world significantly changed. So the rules that worked in the DC world, the before Corona world, no longer really apply in the AC world. Let me just say that. So I'll say that's a lot.
Sure, yeah.
So in this world, I just believe that will be the same. And if I educated myself and learned and skills and impact, value, that would be the thing. So that was one metric that I was using. And so I went in places where if I didn't get that, then I would move on to the next thing. And I would become very impatient because when I realized the reality of how corporate politics work, in my ideal self, I would, of course, initially would give the respect because my conditioning as a Ghanaian is to be polite and American, and African, West African to be specific from Ghana. So to be kind, gentle, and deferential. So I'll do that. But underneath all that was a lion, an impatient lion. And I knew my intelligence because I am a learner, a lifelong learner. So I knew that nobody's brain was bigger than mine or superior to mine. But I was still in deference. And I was also a people pleaser. I was conditioned to be a giver. So I'm speaking my trauma. I'm mixing it all, and hopefully people can follow. So I would start with deference. And then when I realized very quickly that I wasn't going to be fairly, my unhealed self, this didn't always help in the corporate world, would bring this other edge. Who are you? You're not smarter than me, right? That was the ego. And so that was the way I would show up to. I'm taking responsibility for my end of it as well. Because the reality is that it's not always about, in the corporate world, all about hard work, but also about sponsorship. It's really about sponsorship. And it's not also about, it's really about sponsorship. That's the inside world. If you don't have that, and sponsorship is a very biased thing. You don't have the right sponsorship. So it doesn't matter how good you are. Right? You move on at a certain pace. But if you're ambitious and you believe in meritocracy in the fair world, that's not reality in the corporate world. So I learned that, and initially made a lot of mistakes. Of course, those mistakes brought a lot of wisdom. And it's that wisdom that has made me a very effective, not only an executive, but also a leadership coach, right? Rightfully lead as, she's a corporate vice president of CEOs, and even like client roster, former members, cabinet members. So you learn the reality of how things work. And there's a lot of wisdom gleaned from that because I have a lot of empathy for people who believe in meritocracy and get disappointed, particularly if you are a member of any ELG group, whether you're LGBTQI, Pacific Island, or East Asian, South Asian, Caribbean, African, American, who are stuck on the rank and file and suffering quietly. This is the reality of how these things work. And then coupled with that, if you don't have a knowledge of self, right, then it's a life of quiet desperation because I'm just 401ks and all kinds of savings accounts and stock options. So there's a trade-off that happens. But if one is on an authentic spiritual path, realizing that there's a need to align with truth, the unconditioned self or the conditioned self, but still be connected to adding value that brings impact to people. You cannot ignore that call. Well, that's a very unique call to help people disentangle themselves, particularly people who are caught in the thing, to disentangle themselves from that and find true purpose and meaning.
As you're talking about your journey, and it got me to think, being the culprit, it's almost inevitably, if we don't consciously think how we want to show up, we were being led by our own ego, because it's always about me. I'm getting promoted. I'm getting this. I'm getting to the CEO position. It's me, right? And then executing that word, now it kind of forces us to think about what else is important. If not me, what else is important? And that's where I see the transition is happening, at least for you and for myself and some other people too. It's how can I serve? How can I be here for other people? And then removing that ego one piece by one piece. I know it's going to be a lifelong journey. I still got my ego, Sometimes I still think, wow, I do got an ego going on here when I'm thinking about things. Ordering dinner with my husband, I don't consider his opinion. I order whatever I wanted. So I'm curious, about your thoughts on this journey from karma to dharma. Maybe let's start with your definition of what is karma, what is dharma, and then what gets you to go through that transition.
I think it's important to start with the reality in this third dimension that there are structures in place that inhibits equity and fairness societally, historically. And the structures in place are designed to ensure that continues. But I don't want to trivialize that. Now, the next level to that is, what is the impact of these structures on people that it's designed to restrict? And this is where the trauma starts. And that trauma doesn't always look like the obvious, oh, I'm so sad and I don't want to get out of bed today. It looks like arrogance. It looks like confidence. It looks like, hey, look at me. I belong here too. I'm in the same country club, or I'm in the same membership club, or I watch the same TV shows as you. And that trade-off, there's a professor at the University of, he's at the Hoover Institute called Shelby Steele, talks a lot about stereotype threats. I just want to root it in academic theory. The stereotype threat basically signals that a minority group, when in engagement with a so-called majority group, would necessarily play out that stereotype. For example, women in science, there's a popular example when at a conference with male colleagues, like to be a transgender person, for example, or non-binary, would play out certain stereotypes. But in this specific example, let me just, if I was to use a woman, the woman would begin to play out stereotypes of woman as not theoretical, right? Because of stereotype, even though she may be more brilliant and more educated, maybe 2 kids is not just one, the most more. And you can play out that same thing with minority students, with Asians, with Blacks, and so forth. So that also causes that trauma. But we come into these corporations looking like, that I went to college, I say blue chip, I know what I'm doing with my metrics. I can speak the same way that you do, and we use the same jargon, and then I take the same courses and the programs and the same certifications. But inside that, there is a repression and also a trade-off. When Shelby still talks about bargaining, where, okay, I will suppress a part of me so you don't judge me from the color of my skin, right? If you give me this, that's the bargain. So if you look up Shelby Steele's work, you can probably explain it better. But that also creates a certain trauma. And if you can't bargain like that, then you're stuck with either being just going by your wits and perseverance, or resorting to other manipulative tactics to play the game, at the sacrifice of yourself. So weekends are gone, your peace of mind gone, marriage is destroyed, health in shambles. This is the reality of what happens because of the panic and the toxicity and some of the lies, performance, and so forth. And it's no surprise that you have business leaders these days talking about Maslow's work, which is about Maslow's hierarchy. I don't want to waste time talking about the details.
Right.
But really, it's about how do you create an environment where people can be human and then also deliver value, because there's evidence that can happen. So the thing is that these external structures, right, have a real impact. But what I have learned now is that it is one's responsibility to understand how the impact of a broader society, because this really my bias has been being a practicing rules, a follow of trips, a personal influence, life and stuff. So that means that your boss, your mother, your grandparents all enter this life and not dealing with some type of suffering or trauma that is passed on. And at some point, you have to look and say, look, at what point am I the architect of my own life? Regardless of the societal structures or my parents or my family of origin, or family system, there's popular words on that. All of these lead us to develop certain personality types to deal with competition and success and finances and all these things, right? These are all fine, so long as you understand what's happening internally. And the truth is, a lot of us don't. because we're externally driven. And for me, I came to the point of being tired of looking externally and wanted to go inside and say, well, what is my role in my life? Because I can't be limited by, before I had my hair like this, I was clean shaven and wore a suit and tie every day. I wanted to look a certain way. But the reality was I was afraid to be judged if I had a beard or start out in it, right? That was me because I was thinking I'll be judged now seriously. This was in the EC world. So that was my conditioned self, my own trauma. Because of how I look, I wanted to, whistle and mentality, the popular shelving steelwork, right? Or I wanted to bargain a bit, but what was I repressing? What was I rejecting? And how would it show up in unproductive ways, ego and so forth? Then I began to ask the question, is there a way to find real true balance where the inner and outer are safe? Is it the part of everything, the so-called matrix? Finding your truth. As long as you can find your truth within the structure, where that's important, right? It's going to add value as long as it's aligned to your why, your real why, not your negotiating why. And then other times, for some of us, it means leaving the structures, but providing context to those within the structures to find balance between competition and collaboration and personal needs. Competition and collaboration in the corporate system for value, but also personal needs. Sometimes that's compatible. Other times you have to look at other alternatives. The reality today is we are in a transitional economic model where the rules for success are shifting very quickly. The future of work is already here with AI. There is AI. So what kind of human do you have to be to interact with that? What does that mean for economic value? This reminds me of the work of Yuval Noah Harari, who talks a lot about the useless class. A useless class meaning at some point you have no value, no leverage at all. So you realize that there's a need to balance the internal with the external, but also flow with where society is going. So you're not totally disconnected from trends that are happening, but you're not defined by or controlled by them. You're not defined by or controlled by them. And the journey to that point comes with a lot of pain. Pain and looking at your delusions, things as they are, not how I wanted them to be. And in my own journey, I've been divorced twice. I've been loving children. Several relationships have had to change as I heal from myself in terms of responsibility. Things that were no longer resonant or were resonant when I was people pleasing. As a trade-off to playing that game. From that were resonant when I healed, like they're people pleasing. Or matter please. Matter please. Then there's enough to share. Or people pleasing, there's drainage in that energy. There are more trauma created in that. So then other things suffer. But there's a way to find a balance by healing and being above the structures a bit. There's always going to be discrimination, right? Unless the humans decide that there's a way to be above it. So are you going to be inhibited by that and get angry and live a life by despair? I'm saying, redefine yourself. And here I'm inspired by an Audre Lorde quote. I'm going to butcher it. But I think I'm going to see probably best well. If I didn't define myself, I'm much of harms to this point. Other people start to see that journey from being a compliant person to not balance system family systems shape all well. There's a management theory called bounded rationality. And in some talk about your experience. Imagine if you're a radical of a little town, hey, it's the environment you are today, and you don't have any magical level on you. Well, already you're managing a team with people who speak 6, 7 languages, travel the world because of it. Curious and living with strengths and have threatened command and control. You could. You see, that's the bounded rationality paradigm. So there are many reasons for going external, but rooted in so you can understand the external. And I've used some definitions in the corporate world so we can understand what that's happening. But the truth is that there's nothing happening outside. Everything's on the inside. And the outside is a progressing on the inside. It looks like things are happening. And I'm inspired by the work of opinion Butler and for futurism, where you change the narrative by going within. But it means that you have to have an active imagination about who you are and be aware of what trade-offs you're willing to make. If you've gone too far, what trade-offs have you made? Are those the trade-offs you want to make? Where is the internal alignment and not alignment? And if you ask these questions, you understand why you're having challenges that you're having, or how you can find meaning in it, or it's something new that was nothing outside. But that journey to coming to this realization for me was fraught with a lot of mistakes. But a real desire to learn, and for me, yoga and meditation was the key in reconciling how my trauma manifested in this competitive, ego-driven way. So anyway, that's a bit of that. I don't know if it answered the question.
A lot of us are delusional in a way, myself included, for years, right? Like, hey, I thought this is me. I put bunches of labels on myself. This is a Shah who works at Google, successful, check the box. This is a Shah, married, big house, fancy cars, check the box. And this is who I am, shiny, right? But the trade-off you're talking about, right? I was not healthy. I was not happy at all. I was depressed for a while. And that's a trade-off. And the question is, how long do I want to continue the journey with all those trade-offs, or am I okay with the trade-off? And you talk about you divorced twice. It sounds like, to me, well, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not about changing the external environment right away to find your dharma. Rather, it's like working really inside of us. And when things really click and when the healing starts to happen, those external environment might slowly start to change. What do you think on that?
I think nice things are wonderful. You should like nice things. And that's important. Aesthetics. In fact, there's a whole philosophy that dedicated to aesthetics. There's a quote that, and well-dressed person is one of the highest forms of good manners, right? Doesn't matter how much you have or how little you have. Nice things, or attachment to nice things, is where the sickness begins. The physical sickness, the mental sickness, the Monday sickness. Don't talk about vacation for 2 days, even though we're here and there's a beautiful ocean. I can't speak. But can you believe what that VP said to me as he sipped the daiquiri in front of your beautiful ocean? Is that where the problem is? It's the mental attachment and what we want to do in exchange for that. That's an individual thing for everyone to resolve. And if the why is not aligned at that point, then you may say, okay, making a lot of money, but I'm not happy. Why am I not happy? Why am I not happy? Is there something I can do about it? Yes, no. What is the trade-off I'm making? Kids going to college, nice lifestyle. Is it worth the cost that I'm currently paying? That's the crucial question. And that erases the delusion. Is it worth the price?
Yeah, I love that. It's, I think the process of self-inquiry, there's a lot of inner wisdom in there.
But one of the things that my teacher, Where Salas, teaches us, or at least I had a question for her recently, is the notion of no harm. Because as much as we want everyone to go through the dark night of the soul, everyone's individual journey is theirs, right? And even if they're not at the point where we see that they should be, that even in that, we can help relieve their suffering by doing no harm. In other words, not thinking any harmful thoughts towards them. But that's because we're not thinking any harmful thoughts towards ourselves. And that brings me to this concept called metta, which you and I know very well.
Mm-hmm.
But metta is the Pali word, Pali being the language in which the Buddha spoke 700 years ago. Metta meaning loving kindness. And I have a metta practice that I learned from my spiritual friends, where what I do specifically is, one, send a lot of happiness and love and love to myself. May I be happy, may I be abundant. That's the first level. And the second level, I send to my love, my children, and my wonderful children, loved ones. And the third level will be to friends, places, things like that. But the fourth level, which is most important, is people that one has difficult relationships with, whether they're people who've done us harm or we've done harm too. And in that group, that you're also sending the same well wishes that means that may I be happy. And imagine having a toxic boss who wants to fire you, or who's excluding you, or you have a teammate who's acting passive aggressively, and then still sending them well wishes with boundaries, though, right? But the thing is that you don't get lost at wanting karma for them, because they have to deal with their own karma. And as long as you are in the space of saying, I'm not going to lose sleep by trying to be passive aggressive back, right? As long as I cover myself in what I need, then there is a universal balance that happens, restorative balance. That is rooted in the law of nature, laws of physics, laws of the quantum realm, hermetic principles. Everything has a polarity, right? Negative, positive, that yin yang. See? So that you cannot fight fire with fire. You cannot apply a political solution to an economic problem. So it's about understanding and saying, okay, here's the reality of what's happening. How do I deal with this external? What is this external situation teaching me about? What is it revealing to me about where I am? This toxic boss, this difficulty, this timeline, this skill that I don't have, this thing that I did, whatever this is, let's say with my partner, or I'm not feeling too well, whatever this all, this life crisis, I had a recent client that I spoke to recently who is middle aged, she's in her 50s. She's describing her life, and very a VP of many things, and as she's describing her life as being caught off guard. So what has she been doing for the last 20, 30, 40 years? Right? This happens when there is no real inquiry, and you're just living a life thoughtlessness.
The autopilot kind of.
Exactly right. But you see that's not to say that making money, people who are making money are not clear in organizations. There are people who are VPs or directors or senior, what have you, or C-level, who are well balanced and they're happy and they fish and they do all things, right? And they're good people, and kind people. But I found a way to manage that. But once again, this is a very individual thing. Very questions that the individual has to ask themselves rather than looking at the group solution. Where am I with this, right? And I'm a Black, Hispanic, transgender person, right? So those are some obvious things. But my own journey, what am I bringing to this from my own history? right? If you want to look at real balance, and I think that's what we're talking about, the internal story. But of course, external things happen that are bad, and you got to go through that deep process to fix them. But I'm talking about really a higher ideal, which is realizing that one is the master of one's own life.
And then earlier you mentioned about AI, how it's changing the world. And I know we don't have much time left. I would love to hear your thoughts on what makes us human being, or what makes you human being.
Yeah, it's good. Nothing is good or bad. It's how we use it. It's the humans, it's not the system. So same thing with AI, with machine learning, which informs AI and all that. It learns and unlearns and becomes intelligent. It has a lot of neural pathways which should reveal to us who we truly are. The machine, artificial intelligence, then what are we? Elon Musk could say, well, machines infinitely superior to us. Yeah, but was in short term. But that's also because we have forgotten who we are, truly. So what does it mean to be human? Tapping into the inside begins to reveal the depth of the divine intelligence. So we're not all distracted by the schedules and all. I mean, what stops being distracted, come to real intelligence. What does AI do? AI is there and it has no belief. It gives you the options based on the algorithm and the learning. So what does the human do? The conditioned self is I am this thing and I'm attached to this, I am not. The unconditioned self is I am the observer. So everything, you can see the intelligence of how things ebb and flow in your life without being disconnected from your life. And this is what I think being human, being organic is about. It's about really beginning to connect to that inner intelligence intentionally, and then using AI as a tool for the progress, not as a replacement. Have to work together. This is friendship, which I think is hard to resolve because we think AI is going to do the whole thing.
Yeah, I think AI, it's currently, at least, it's all data, right? You kind of train the model and processing the data. It's exactly how we process our data in our mental space. And I think for years, we glorify or worship our ability to think, our ability to process, make decisions from here in your head. And that's why I think there's a lot of fear in the world, because for people who stuck in here, they forget about there's something else going on. There's so much more the divine and all the stuff that we can tap into. And the transition, what we're going through in current stage of life, the evolvement, and I think it's AI and everything, technology is pushing us to get to the truth. Who are we as human beings? You and I are coaches, we both know the best gift we can give someone is to actually offer a question for that person to definitely be, I don't want to say deeper, but maybe like offer a different way to see the world. What would be a good question you wanted people to start to contemplate as they go on the journey, whether it's spiritual journey or the journey of finding their truth?
Yeah. I'll take this from Advaita Hindu in quoting or paraphrasing Way teacher Ramadan Mahan. Hi.
That's a big question. It's really hard to uncover. It takes a lot of courage to really allow us to see the truth. But I would say that's a good starting point. If you really wanted to get on the journey, keep asking and keep exploring. And we are here to support if you need additional help. And Nana has an Inner Mileage app, and then I'm going to put the link below if you wanted to check it out. Okay, so thank you, Nana. I know you got another call and to jump into, but I appreciate your time being here and sharing your wisdom, because we don't really get that much time to spend with each other, but I think your wisdom is so worth sharing with the rest of the world. So we'll see whoever's here, you're meant to hear the message that we share today. So thank you again.
See you soon.
Bye. Thanks for listening. If you are a conscious leader in tech, sales, and beyond, check out my free Soul Scientist community at shahearly.com/community. Sign up if you resonate with the message. And if you enjoy the show, don't forget to subscribe and share the show with your colleagues and friends. I'll see you next week.